Welcome back to Design Build Workshop. Today we're going to talk about a three-wheeled bandsaw. So this saw was actually gifted to me by a friend. Now when I say gifted, I guess we need to take that into some context. This had been sitting outside for about 3 or 4 years, and he happened to know about this three-wheel bandsaw, and I happened to be looking for a three-wheeled bandsaw. I needed something that had an extra, really deep throat to it, but I couldn't handle anything that was like really large in my garage shop. So when I got this, it was in pretty bad shape. It's a lot of rust, a lot of decay, a lot of, the paint obviously was gone. I wasn't even worried about the paint. Some of the other issues that I had with it were that some of the stuff was so stiff that it was, just stuck. So that took a lot of WD-40, a lot of loosening up, that kind of thing. The guides were shot. I mean, they were just rusted shut. So those all had to get replaced or reworked. A couple of them I was actually able to, to go over and get them to work again. Some of the problem I had were the bearings for the wheels where they were mounted themselves. And I lucked out on that because they stayed in pretty good shape. I was able to basically take that all apart, really flush them out, get those bearings rolling nice and smoothly. And because of that, it worked really well. So I didn't have to replace any of those bearings. So I was really happy about that. And I was really amazed that I didn't have to for this thing being sitting outside for so long. So of course the big benefit to a three-wheel bandsaw is its depth of throat. So this one is 24.5 inches. So I can work on something that's a little over 4 feet in overall width, and I can be able to cut it, comfortably on this saw. To accomplish that on a bigger saw or an upright saw, I would need a wheel diameter of over 24 inches, top and bottom, and those are usually pretty big models, floor standers or that kind of thing. This one's on wheels, so I can move it around my shop. The big detriment to a three-wheeler is that now I've got 3 wheels lined up so they can handle this blade and not have it get off track. That becomes a lot more difficult with a three-wheeler, and a lot of times people get kind of upset with a three-wheeler because it's hard to track. I've got this one nailed down pretty well, so I've got no problems with it tracking at all, and it's been a really smooth running saw for me. Whenever you're rebuilding a piece of machinery, it's really important to document everything, and the reason I do that is so that I can get it back together. So you'll notice I've got a lot of photographs or a lot of images of this thing in various states of, disassembly. And sometimes I've got close-ups of, pieces or bearings or a keyway or something like that. And the reason I've got that is so that when I'm taking this thing all apart and I'm rebuilding it or cleaning it all up and trying to rebuild it, is that sometimes I don't remember where everything goes. I got a whole lot of little pieces and I'm not sure where everything goes. So if I photograph everything as I'm taking it apart, I know exactly how it's supposed to go back together. So anytime you do anything like this, make sure you take lots of photographs so you've got reference material you can go back to and say, oh yeah, okay, I remember where that goes. So otherwise you're going to be chasing your tail trying to figure out what's going on, and then you're going to inevitably have the 1 or 2 parts that are left over trying to figure out where those went, and then a couple months down the road something breaks and you're like, oh yeah, I needed that part there. The toughest part about rebuilding a bandsaw is you want to make sure that the tires are in good shape. I really lucked out for this thing being outside for 3 or 4 years. The tires are actually really nice. So I didn't have any issues with that, because I think trying to find the tires for this would have been impossible. I would have had to replace all the wheels and everything else to try to get it to go together. But you can see it's pretty simple, pretty basic. All of this is just sheet metal and basically attached to this tubing on the other side, and I'll flip it around so you can see what that looks like. So basically just 3 big pieces of tubing, and then everything else, all the sheet metal is basically attached to it. And then, the wheels themselves are actually anchored through the center of that tubing. So it gave it some good stiffness and support. So you can see in this video, it cuts really well. It's very smooth. Never had an issue with it. And like I said, it was free, so I couldn't beat it. Hope you can find something like this for yourselves if you're willing to try to risk a three-wheeler. If you've been enjoying the content of this video, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. So here you can see the construction from the other side. You've got the tube here, a tube here, and a vertical tube here. And the two wheels, the top and bottom wheel, are put in right through the tubing. So what I like about that is that the tubing is good and stout. This is all just sheet metal, so the tubing is what's really holding this thing in place. And then the drive wheel is actually suspended from the back, like a lot of machinery is. And then you've got the weight of the motor basically keeping tension on the drive pulley. So some of the big problems with the three-wheel bandsaws are that most of them are tabletop models and they're really small. And the wheel diameters are tiny. And so this one is about 10 inches. So I feel like the 10-inch diameter for this wheel is not enough to put additional stress on the blade. I'm not running really heavy blades in here anyway. I'm just running a 1/4-inch blade. And so I think with the 10-inch wheels, I'm not really stressing that blade out too much. And I really haven't had a blade break in this. I've had this thing running for about 3 or 4 years, and I've never had an issue with the blade, getting stressed or breaking on me prematurely. So it's been, this diameter I think is just fine for a three-wheeler. So some of the reasons I like older machinery is well, one, I think it's built better. So in 1970s, maybe not so much. But anything from the 40s and 50s, maybe into the 60s, I feel like it's a much higher quality machine. This doesn't have any castings in it, but I still think it's fabricated pretty decently. It didn't last very long, so it probably wasn't very popular, but it works well for me. The other thing is that I can buy machinery for way less money than I can buy new stuff for. So, and a decent quality. So, I can buy some old Delta pieces or some old Sears pieces, Atlas, some of those old machine tools I can pick up for way less money than and get a much better quality item. Something that's probably produced in the 40s is still going to run really well as long as the gearing is still in good shape. And so a lot of the stuff I have is older for that very reason. I can buy it inexpensively, and I can maintain it pretty easily because it's not very complicated. There's no plastic on it, so I don't have to worry about that. So if there's anything wrong with this, I can fix it probably myself without having to deal with some kind of plastic component that I can't get a hold of. So, and like I said, this one was free. And occasionally that kind of thing will happen. I've got friends that know, I do woodworking and I do metalworking and whatever else. And occasionally they'll say something, hey, something's come up and you want it? And I'll say, yeah, sure. Or the other option is Facebook Marketplace or one of the other Craigslist or something like that. I peruse that kind of stuff all the time and look for deals to come up. And if I see something that looks pretty decent and then something I feel like comfortable, purchasing, of course, buyer beware. You may buy something that's not so great. So you kind of have to know what you're getting into, and you have to be able to know that maybe you can fix it if there's a problem. Thanks again for joining me on Design Build Workshop. Hopefully you can find a tool like this to work on yourself.